How should we engage the transgender issue as believers? Welcome to Grace and Truth. My name is Owen Strachan, and I will be your host. Please subscribe to, like, and download this podcast on all platforms. Today, I want to consider this very significant issue. It's an issue that is in lots of places, and lots of Christians are confronting the air quotes transgender idea in lots of different forms. And I am so thankful when I see men and women of God who are standing firm in the scriptures and out of love for fellow sinners are speaking the truth about biblical manhood, biblical womanhood, God's design for the family, and related truths. I am joined today by my guest, Sharaya Colter. She is a communications expert. She is affiliated with a brand new work called the Danbury Institute that's coming out in just about a month. And most importantly, I think she would say she is a woman of God and a mother. She's a mother, and I love that. So Sharaya, welcome to Grace and Truth.
Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Strachan.
Yeah, thank you for making the time. I appreciate this. I was contacted by you about signing support for a letter about a certain initiative in Ohio related to transgenderism. I thought I would just turn it over to you for a few minutes to describe what's going on there and why you and others are responding.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity to do that. Really, this debate that they're having in Ohio is something that's been happening across the country. So it's really not unique to their state. And really what happens there in Ohio has the potential to affect things in states all over the country. Mm-hmm. So it's really important moment. But they're really looking right now at they've already passed this legislation that is to protect children and women. It's called the SAFE Act, HB 68. You might have heard of it referred to both those ways. But the legislature did pass it in the state there, but their Republican governor has vetoed it. So right now there is a push from conservatives and really just people who have a lot of common sense and certainly people of faith to push back on that and say, no, this is great legislation and we urge you to override the governor's veto. So like you said about the letter, we did kind of put together a letter. We felt like this was a really important moment to latch on to this very critical moment where we need people to stand up and say, look, we stand for truth, we stand for reality, and we're not just going to go along with these make-believe games forever. So their letter is essentially just to urge the legislators to go ahead and override the veto of that bill so that it can be enacted. So we did get more than 400 signatures and a lot of really notable Christian and conservative leaders, people who, for instance, Riley Gaines, who has done a phenomenal job of standing up, has faced this in her own personal life of dealing with transgender people trying to come and, take over sports and that sort of thing, and really have men invading women's spaces. Mm-hmm. So this is a moment where it's really dangerous for children because they're having kids susceptible, very vulnerable, innocent kids, and they're putting in these places where they're trying to do transgender treatment on them, both by procedures, by chemicals, and these things have lifelong problems. Mm-hmm. And some of the things that they do are irreversible. You can't ever go back and fix it. And a child, my kids can't even decide one day if they want eggs and then the next they don't like eggs. So we cannot be asking a child if they know their gender, want to change their gender, and just absurdity. So that is a whole aspect. And I think as grown-ups, as adults in the room, we have to say, we're here to speak up on behalf of those people who cannot speak up for themselves. And in this instance, it's our children. It's not their role to go out and defend themselves in the legislature. So those of us who are adults need to go out and say, we're not just going to stand for that. Mm-hmm. That's not reality. It's not true. There's nothing you can ever do to actually change the gender that God has made you with. That's deep inside your DNA. You cannot change it. Right. But we have to stand up and say no. And so we've done that through this letter. We just delivered the signatures yesterday in person to the Ohio Capitol and had a great reception there with the legislators who were really grateful for the stand that we're all taking. And they just were kind of floored by the big response that we were able to get. And that's all glory to God. He allowed that to all come together. And so I really think in this moment, we're seeing a lot of more of a resurgence, which we need to, of Christians getting back to the battlefield of truth.
Yes.
For a long time, there has been a thought of, politics, like that's not for me. I'll just leave it to the politicians and people who study that sort of thing and want to get involved in the things we don't want to get involved in. But it's really important that Christians and people who just follow God closely involve themselves in the public square and in the decisions of our country, because our country is one of self-government. So if we decide we're just going to abstain from that, then we're just leaving the decisions to people who aren't acting in a way that glorifies God or is guided by the wisdom in Scripture. And that obviously is going to lead to an outcome in the country that doesn't reflect our values. And that's really what we're seeing in 2024. The country does not reflect our values anymore. So we have to get back to that. But thank goodness we're seeing a lot of people realize that, willing to get on board. And really, that's kind of, it dovetails right into the heart of the Danbury Institute, which will soon launch, like you mentioned. The Danbury Baptists, a couple hundred years ago, they really took a stand. They got involved. They were not emailing, but they're mailing letters back and forth to Thomas Jefferson, talking about the relationship between church and state and what that looks like, seeking his, willingness to protect that. But they were willing to go and get involved. So in the same spirit and legacy of that, we want to urge Christians to get back involved. Take a stand, whether it's in your local community, your school board, your state, or the national level. We have to get back in the game.
Wow, Sharaya, that was some heat. Thank you for that. Don't mess with Texas, and don't mess with a Christian mom in Texas and all those you're working with. I love it. I couldn't agree more about how I think Christians are having a moment where we see that, you could call it lots of things, but I'll call it this: neither left nor right political involvement. That whole line that dominated in our circles, we're both Baptists, we're both conservatives, conservative evangelicals, I think you could say. That line of thinking was pretty hot 15 to 10 to 5 years ago. And it seemed like that was the way that evangelicals could re-engage with unbelievers. And that's a good thing. I want to say that. I want to be a thoughtful Christian witness to unbelievers every day I live. I want to be a gospel presence wherever I am. So I'm all in on loving unbelievers and seeking to reach out to them and making connections with them where I can. But it strikes me that the manner in which that was said to be done by a lot of pastors in big cities, for example, and it's hard to be a clear conservative Christian in a big city, let that be said, but the manner was just drop the culture war issues, so to speak. If the left calls it a culture war issue, then we're not playing. We're just sitting back here, and we're going to be nice, and we're going to say nice things to you, and we're not going to cause any waves. And I think we're having a wake-up moment, Sharaya, in 2024. We've been having one where not just those of us like you and me who have a kind of edge towards politics, but Christians are going, all right, wait, this is 0 hour. Either 30-year-old men with the shoulders of Spartans are coming in the little girl's restroom, or they're not. Draw a line. Either kids are going to be put on hormone blockers, or they're not. There's not a lot of wiggle room anymore on these issues. Would you say that's accurate as I've tried to describe it?
That's so accurate. We're coming to a place where these are not really things that we have to get deep in the weeds to debate. We simply have to be on the very top level of common sense. And what 5 years ago was absolutely accepted across the board. I think if you looked back 10 or 15 years and you tried to explain to someone what's going on now, I don't think they would believe you. I think they would say that's too far-fetched. Yeah. That's never going to happen. In fact, a lot of people did say that, when there's a lot of pushback on like the slippery slope argument sort of thing, like that's never going to happen. You guys are really making a big deal out of nothing. But it's here and it is happening. Yeah. It's happening with 3-year-olds when they're trying to convince them and take them up on stage and say, don't you feel like, honey, that you're a boy? Oh, good. And they'll all clap for them. And I mean, this is parents. This is adults pushing this on kids. They're not coming up with that on their own. I mean, every parent can tell you that kids play and they make believe. And that's fine and that's good. Right. But it's when adults who have ulterior motives and who want themselves to be living in these wayward ways, definitely not guided by God's wisdom, and inject themselves and these totally progressive and really absurd ideas into the equation with kids. And they are really causing like lifelong problems mentally, physically, across the board.
Yes.
It's really not good.
It's really not. Okay. When this podcast is released, some of the things we're talking about may have been sorted for good or for ill, let that be said. But where we're sitting right now in early, almost mid-January 2024, as you said earlier, the letter has been delivered to the governor. We're hoping that his veto of the SAFE Act will be repealed. Do I have that all correct technically?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. We're hoping for that. And the stakes here, you mentioned this a few minutes ago, but Ohio sometimes is derisively called a flyover state or something like that. It's part of the Midwest. The cool kids don't always love the Midwest. I've lived there for years in the past, and so know about that. But actually, Ohio is a very important state culturally and societally. Why did you say that this is kind of a watershed moment a few minutes ago in terms of what goes on in Ohio?
Well, a few other states have had similar pieces of legislation like this, and Tony Perkins has talked about that this week, where this has already happened. So they're not the very first, but they're definitely on the front end of dealing with these issues. And a lot of times these come up because, you deal with the things that are brought to your table. So this has been brought to them through their legislature, and it just so happens now that they're on the national stage. It really helps that they've had a lot of publicity from people like Riley Gaines, who have the personal stories of people invading her sport.
Yes.
And so that has brought a lot of added attention, thank goodness, to it. But really, it's one of those things that once you open the door to something, it really takes off.
Yeah.
And it's hard to put the jack in the box back in the box. So the more that you see these things just generally accepted, like transgender ideology and that sort of thing, it just starts to become a normal part of the tapestry of the country. And it's really hard then to pull those strings back out. So when you're seeing so many of these things start to pop up, it's kind of like whack-a-mole. You really have to get these in check as they come. Otherwise, it just starts to be their normal. And once you get people to laugh at something or just go, oh yeah, I'm used to seeing that, I just know it. I mean, it's already happened with a lot of cultural issues now, and I think Christians have to be on their guard daily to be remembering what is God's good design, what does he say about all kinds of issues across the board, because it's easy then, if you're living in the world, to adopt the ways of the world inadvertently.
Yes.
The scripture talks a lot about set your mind on the right things and renew your mind, and it's an intentional effort to follow God and to plant his word in your mind and to live according to that. So it's not going to happen on by default, or just if you're putting yourself in neutral. You have to be honestly, intentionally remembering what is the right way. And so with these pieces of legislation, it helps to say, no, this isn't the right way. And we're going to stop and take this moment in time and mark it and say, this isn't the right way. And we're standing up, these people on this collective day in this collective state. No, this is not the right way.
Yes. And sometimes I think what muzzles evangelical involvement is that evangelicals think that everybody they're standing on the opposite side of is the big bad wolf, and secularism is inevitable, and the march of what I call neo-paganism cannot be stopped, and these sorts of things. And if you're not careful and you're listening to certain voices out there, you can end up in a very doomsdayist frame of mind. Interestingly, in the evangelical world today, some Christians are playing off of that and arguing for a kind of hit the nuke button option where we've basically lost it all. We've lost this country. There's nothing really left to fight for. It's not that they're arguing that we should stop preaching Christ or something, but in civilizational terms, the battle's over. And what I hear you saying is, no, we've got to keep fighting. That's very much what I would say. And a lot of times, Sharaya, when you push back, you actually find that what looked like the big bad wolf isn't necessarily that big. Sometimes it's about the size of a field mouse, but it was talking a big game. And so that's part of why we have to We have to contend for the faith, Jude 3.
Absolutely. And I still believe that these, wayward parts of society that are living in all these ways that have become really platformed by things that have a lot of power and money and prestige, to get their ideas out there through the media, through entertainment, through politics, all the ways they are. It's like the mouse in the shadow. It looks like they're much larger and more powerful and much more in the majority than they are.
Yes.
I think it's so important that Christians and just people of common sense remember we are still in the majority. And, as far as like just giving up and having the doomsday attitude, I think we all have to just wake up every day and say, the Lord tells us, to him who knows the good he ought to do and he doesn't do it, to him it's sin. So if I know the good that I should be doing of speaking the truth in love, saying, hey, this is what reality is, this is what God says, this is how your body works, this is how our society should work. We founded our country upon a system of values. We respect those values and we stand for them. We just have to continue doing the good work because that's what we're instructed by Christ to do. So we don't look at it and say, oh, this is a winning moment, so I'm going to hop on the train. We do what we're supposed to do, whether it looks like we're going to win or not. So it may look like the victory is not assured and is so unlikely. But all throughout Scripture, lots of times people had that outlook and said, like, this looks crazy. And in fact, those are the times that God really likes to use the most because it gives him the most glory. To use a situation that looks perilous, looks like it's not going to have a good outcome, and to use it to show that he can overcome that. So I think this is a great time for us to have faith, honestly, and to say, Lord, whether you change this around in our country or you don't, I'm here to be, ambassador for truth, and I'm here to to be your hands and feet. And whether we win, whether we lose, whether people like us, whether they don't, it doesn't matter. All I want to do is wake up each day and be faithful to do what you are calling us to do, in which we can take our marching orders straight from Scripture on what is it that we are told to do. And that looks, there's a myriad ways we can do things. But we just go and we just do until the Lord comes back or takes us home.
Yes.
So we don't have to say, if we win, then we'll keep on going. No, we just keep going. We just keep on telling the truth and doing what's right.
Yes, that's right. And we don't even have to win. That's the amazing thing. This isn't a get involved in order to win or not reality. You mentioned that a minute ago. This is a stand for the truth of God reality. And look, if it ends up being just you and God on the right side of history, so to speak, who cares? I was reflecting on this in a slightly different category of scriptural teaching, Jesus being called the friend of sinners, Matthew 11:19, for example. Look, if Jesus is the only friend you have out there, if he's the only one who will end up at the end of the day standing with you, and all you have is Jesus as your friend, you have the only friend you could ever need. That's friendship isn't the same thing as public square witness, but I think it's actually a little bit connected. If all we have is the truth of God, and by the grace of God, having the ability to speak this truth in love, even if others don't want to, even if other Christians don't want to, for a variety of reasons, good, bad, and otherwise, who cares? Now, the other reality is God is often pleased to give amazing deliverances and victories that we would never expect. And that's the whole reality of faith, living by faith. We're not just justified by faith, we walk by faith. The righteous live by faith, Romans 1:17. You've been called into this, it sounds like, from real conviction. And when we talked about what title you would be identified by at the beginning of the podcast, I love that you said, several different things, which I mentioned, but you also said mother. What part of that identity, God-given, of mother has summoned you into this battle, Sharaya?
It is just, it's definitely the most important piece aside from the fact that God calls us to do what's right. Having children changes everything. The children are not just an abstract idea to me. They're my kids, and they're my kids' friends. And a year ago, my son was sitting in a kindergarten classroom in a public school, and the teacher next door to him was an LGBTQ plus total activist, going to parades, doing all this stuff. And I just, was constantly praying, like, Lord, don't let her have an influence on my son. Like, I know she's next door. It's a hard spot. Like, I don't want there to be a lot of interaction there. I would talk to him a lot about, if he saw her at the playground or did she say anything to him? Mm-hmm. And ultimately, I'm just really thankful to the Lord. He allowed us to put our kids in Christian school now, which is a really fabulous blessing that I don't take for granted. Mm-hmm. But these kids, they are real little people, and they need us to speak for them. They don't even know the issues that are happening. I was watching Jeopardy with my kids this week, and my son goes, Mom, that is that a girl or a boy? Mm-hmm. He looks funny. And he caught it even before I did. Like, it was, I think a man trying to be a woman. Right. So we just, found a reason really quick to change this show for a different reason. Like, oh, these are not very interesting categories, whatever. But that just shows you, like, this is in the world all around them. Yeah. And I'm watching Jeopardy, for crying out loud, with my kids. Like, it's not like I'm watching anything crazy. So it's in all parts of the world. So you have to be, as a parent, you've probably seen that graphic of, like, the umbrella, and there's all kinds of darts coming down, and you're just trying to shield your kids. Mm-hmm. And that's my job right now. That's my top job, to train them up, as Deuteronomy 6 says, in the ways of the Lord, showing them while I'm sitting down, lying down, walking in the way, the ways of the Lord. And at the same time, to protect them against what I know as an adult are the attacks against them and their innocence and their whole entire lives and their souls. They don't know everything that's against them, but I do. Yes. And because I know and because I'm aware of it, it is my duty to defend them. So I just see, this extends into the pro-life battle also. These children, whether they're in the womb, whether they're already, 2 years old, 3 years old, 7 years old, they need the adults to stand up and say, this might not be popular. This takes a lot of time. This has a million reasons not to do it, but I will stand for you because you simply need me to. Yes. So when you look, I don't know if you've seen also that map that talks about the number of gender clinics that were available in 2007 and the number that were available in 2022. But you just see like 2 dots on the map in 2007. Yes. The map is so covered that you can barely see all the dots in 2022. Man. That doesn't just happen. And that's not a response to a growing medical problem. Right. That is activism trying to prey on our children. Yes. They're not just seeing an issue and responding to it. They are making an issue. And they're doing that by luring kids and their parents into thinking that there's a problem that this will solve, and then guilt tripping them and saying, if you don't solve it in this way, your kid's probably just going to commit suicide. Right. And I mean, that is mega warfare. Yeah. To use that kind of psychological warfare on someone and a parent, they're putting people in a really bad spot. And I think there's a lot of compassion that needs to be there for understanding, look, parenting is super hard. Childhood is hard. All of this is really hard. We want to help you walk through this in the right way and be aware and alert to the fact that these medical industries are making hundreds of thousands of dollars per patient for this sort of thing. And then once they get them in there, it goes on forever. So there are lots of studies, lots and lots of research showing how much money they're bringing in for these sorts of things, and it is insane. So, you should be really concerned when you see that dollar signs are driving someone to do something. I don't think, I know they're not acting in the best interest of the nation's kids. Mm-hmm. They're acting in the interest of wayward progressive ideologies and money. Yep. And so as Christians, we have to recognize that and say, we call it out for what it is. This is wrong, and we're not just going to abide by it. Right. We're going to tell you no.
Yeah, and that is love, just to reiterate that. Just so that, Sharaya, your husband, Scott, good man, knows that. You two are standing up in unity as I perceive you on this. But a lot of Christians have been misled on these things, and it's a real blessing to be able to just speak truth in free air and say, it is love to stand against evil. It is love to seek to protect not only your own children, which you're doing and I'm doing, my wife Bethany's doing, but to try to reach out in some way and protect children in public schools and these sorts of things. That is an act of love. You think of a figure like William Wilberforce in the late 18th and early 19th century as an example of a man, a Christian, who was so concerned for the dignity of humanity and the gospel. By the way, there's not a separation between those concerns, rightly. They're rightly connected, that is. We've got to have that kind of concern. It is so tragic that they've taken Jeopardy. They've taken Jeopardy from us. Incredible. I mean, here you are. Most of the commercials, our family has historically watched a good bit of Jeopardy as well. Most of the commercials are for, aging cream and these sorts of things.
Yeah.
I mean, I won't say what other commercials pop up, but some of them, you're like, that is not our market. Anyway, here's this show targeted to retired people, at least in some measure. And it's the forefront of the air quotes gender revolution. So it really is a time for standing. It really is a time to speak the truth in love. Ephesians 4:15, as you said. Standing for what is true is love, by the way. Mm-hmm. So I'm very thankful for these initiatives that you're part of.
I think that this kind of goes along with what you have talked and written a lot about, too, on the importance of fathers. Because obviously I'm a mother, and so I have my own role. But we work in tandem. So there's then the whole father issue. And I think especially as you get into the men invading women's sports and locker rooms, fathers, we need you so badly. When I watch some of these swim meets and I see there's parents in the crowd and there's fathers and then there's their daughters in their swimsuits out there having to do this on their own, and no one's standing up for them. There is a really big need for biblical manhood, like you said, in love, but in firmness. We can be firm. Jesus was firm. Yep. He was clear. Yep. He was not rolling over and letting people do anything. That's not biblical manhood. Biblical manhood is being a man of valor and defending those who need defending. And so we need definitely more fathers to stand up and say, whoa, whoa, whoa. You think you're putting a man in my daughter's locker room? Have you lost your mind? Yes. And the answer there is not to say, well, I'm just going to, start not letting my daughter play sports because I don't want her to be in the locker room with this fella. No. That's taking advancement for women back hundreds of years. We're not going, and also, so where's the left on that? They say they're for women, but then they're for basically the erasing of women.
Yes.
So the answer is not for us to pull everybody out of sports and say, well, you can just let everyone go in and we'll just stay out because we don't agree with you putting men in our locker room and having to change and shower next to them.
Right.
No. The answer is to say, women are women, men are men, the two are not the same, and you may not be in our sports or in our locker rooms. Because even more than I'm not going to go as a full-grown woman and share a locker room with a man, I am nowhere near going to let my daughter do that. But I'm also not going to say, honey, you can't ever play soccer or be on a swim team because the culture's just got too bad and they're invading our space. No. We're going to take our space back. And we're going to say, women can have their spot, men can have their spot, and we need the dads to stand up and say, we will be the leaders in making that clear.
Yes, that's exactly right. As a woman and a man who stand for biblical complementarity, this has to be led by men. That doesn't mean to the exclusion of godly women being in the mix and being involved and speaking up and all sorts of good things like you are doing rightly, like Riley Gaines is doing courageously. But it does mean that, and by the way, this actually starts with the pulpit. It doesn't just start with, so-called ordinary dads like myself sitting there listening to a message. It doesn't mean a hijacking of the pulpit either, Sharaya. But it does mean pastors who courageously teach the Word of God, including where the Word of God is contested by a secular and pagan culture, and then pastors who go on to put steel into the spine of all the congregation, men and women alike, seeking in the Spirit to fan them into flame of good deeds. But yes, men have got to step up. It amazes me. It probably shouldn't amaze me. But as we kind of work to a close here in the podcast, it amazes me to think that in those swim meets you're talking about, there are men. There is William Thomas. His name is William Thomas, by the way, who has gone into the women's dressing room and been nude alongside girls changing. I mean, and then these fathers, yay, daughter, go in your race. You just think this is what happens when Satan hoodwinks a people and evil is allowed to dominate. And so normal red-blooded American men don't bat an eye at these kind of realities. So to close on an encouraging note for those listening and watching, this is actually also a tremendously clarifying moment and a great gospel opportunity, because we can speak the truth, we can proclaim Christ, we can show the difference that being a Christian makes. It means not embracing transgenderism and so on and so forth. And so I'm thankful that you stand for that. As we wrap, any closing word, and then do tell us a little bit more about the Danbury Institute in conclusion.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we go forward in positivity and hope and faith, and we do try to exhibit everything that the Lord shows us, is the good, upstanding Christian character, and standing and defending and contesting for faith. Yeah. The Danbury Institute can be found right now at danburyinstitute.org. We will be launching in February 2024 officially, although I feel like this issue has given us a great way to hit the ground running even before we start. And so I'm grateful for that, and definitely urge people, this issue I'm sure will be decided by the time this podcast airs, but will be others like it. So it's really important to get on board with praying, because we do believe in the power of prayer and that it does move mountains, and God's hand is moved, as Luke 18 talks about, that the persistent widow shows us the power of continually coming before the throne of grace and asking God to intervene. So I think we need to continue to let that lead our efforts, and not to think it's like the second thing to do, but it's the first thing to do. So any help that, people would like to give in their prayers and their support, we are very grateful, and just really optimistic, because I think we're turning a corner in the country when people are standing up, they're waking up. Sometimes I think things have to kind of hit rock bottom before a lot of people are awakened. And I think we're kind of getting really close to that rock bottom. A lot of people are waking up. So that's a great thing. Yes. And I think we want to, make the very most of that. Amen.
Well said, sister. Thank you so much to Sharaya Colter for being on Grace and Truth today. This has been our attempt, this conversation, her and me working through tough issues. And if you are watching this or listening to this, and you are seeing family members or loved ones or friends or neighborhood members drifting toward these kind of ideas, know that there is infinite grace and total truth to be found in the Word of God. And Christ is the one who imaged those realities perfectly. And so by looking to Christ, that is ultimately where you find all the grace and all the truth you need. Sharaya, thank you so much for being on today. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Everybody out there, thank you for listening and watching. Please subscribe to, like, and download the podcast wherever you can with impunity. And I would just point you in closing to the grace and truth that is in Christ. We are optimists. We are invincible optimists because Christ is undefeated. God bless you.